welcome to the very second episode of Tiger Talk. This episode I've got a very special guest, a bit of a legend in the industry and a huge inspiration to me. Peter McGough. Peter, how are you?
I'm fine, Giles. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm doing pretty well these days.
Mm-hmm. So, we'll talk about your health and everything a bit later, but yes, so you were at Tampa last week. How did that go?
It was a very good show. I haven't been to a show since the Arnold Classic in March last year, so, you know, I was itching to get back. I haven't been able to go to shows, but this was really competitive between Alexis Rivera and Sergio Oliva Jr. And I've rarely seen a pose down like it, those two, the last comparison. It was like two heavyweights slugging it out. There was sweat flying everywhere. There was screaming going on. They brought the best out of each other. And the camaraderie afterwards between the two of them was tremendous. It was a great show. The level, say the top 15 in the Open, is probably the best in-depth I've seen in a lineup for a long time. You know, there's normally only 3 or 4 guys in shape, and here everybody was in shape just about.
You said that on the MD forum. You said you couldn't believe how just so many people were in really, really good condition. It was something that, especially in the shows nowadays, it's maybe not seen as much as it was in the 90s. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's used to be the opposite way around. You get 15 guys. Maybe 3 of them wouldn't be in shape, and just lately it's been the reverse of that. But this was quite refreshing to see. And Tim Gardner always runs a great show, as you know. You were there last year.
Yeah. Okay then, Peter. Well, I want to go right back to the start, because I started following the sport in 1990. The first, I think it was issue 96 of Muscle Mag. It was about April, May 1990. I started buying the magazines. And then, obviously, in 1991, I was in Hereford. I was training there. And I went into the newsagents and I picked up a copy of The Pumping Press, issue number 1. Now, I'll be honest, that's the only bodybuilding publication I've ever read every single word of. Let's just go back to that and tell us about how that newspaper and everything came around.
Right, well, I've been working for English magazines, British magazines since '82, and more it seemed clear to me that a homegrown magazine couldn't take on Flex and Muscle Mag. You know, they would have 8-page spreads of Bob Paris and all the rest of it, and we had, whoever it was. No disrespect to them, but the readers want to read about stars. I developed this thought. If we went to desktop publishing with a tabloid, A, it would be a lot cheaper. B, we could get it out a hell of a lot quicker. And C, we would do what the others weren't doing. We maximised on gossip and controversy. We were outrageous in some of the things we said. And, eventually we got it off the ground, and our first issue was March 1991. And to be honest, it sort of caught on like wildfire. And
that issue was the one with when Dorian Yates had just won the Night of Champions, wasn't it? I remember the picture on the front.
Yeah, that picture was from the previous Night of the Champions, where he was second. The 91 hadn't yet taken place. Later in the year, we'd have a picture from the 91. But, sometimes you look back on life and you think, oh, it was a coincidence, or you were lucky then. But there seems to be a pattern, because I was looking for targets, and my targets probably would have been the IFBB with going through the drug testing thing that just didn't take off. But then, lo and behold, along came Vince McMahon and the World Bodybuilding Federation. They actually offered me a job, but I really didn't know it wasn't gonna work. Yeah. And they became the target, really, and we had loads of fun with it, but they didn't have so much fun with it. And what we did to maximise what we were doing, we express mailed copies of each issue to all the top people in the sport: Ben Weeder, Joe Weedy, Wayne DeMilia, Jim Mayer, Lee Haney, all the top 20 bodybuilders in the world, Sam Tonker, as it was, everybody that had some influence. So they'd all be reading this stuff at the same time. Yeah. And they assumed that everybody in the world was reading it, and we used to get I mean, for instance, when we covered the 91 Mr. Olympia, which was held on a Saturday, the guys were on the European tour the next weekend in England, and we handed out copies of the full report, and they couldn't believe that we already. I don't know if you could see that.
Yeah,
but you know, we had the.
I bought that issue. I bought it. It was amazing.
And we had, you know, like 3 pages of this sort of reportage, and they were on the bus reading it, you know, and they couldn't believe it. Because the next Olympia report by the magazines, they'd have to wait another 5 or 6 weeks. So it was the immediacy, and it was the, you know what it was like. I was just being outrageous with the puns and the jokes, and, you know, because it really was desperate times. We thought, this has got to work. I wasn't going to pull any punches at all. Yeah. You know, I was just, if I upset anybody, that's hard luck. It was, you know, they can insult me if they want, you know.
I think it's these were in the days, obviously years before the internet, and it was so groundbreaking. Because I remember thinking, because sometimes even like a week or something after the Olympia, we wouldn't even know the results, and there you were a week later with this newspaper, and it was like, what was it, 20 pages of Olympia coverage? I mean, this was unheard of.
Yeah, and it's 20 pages of tabloids, which is like 40 pages in a standard magazine, you know, which that's the size of the standard magazine. So, yeah, we maximised on that, you know, the news, the gossip, upset a few people, then had to come to America and face them.
Yeah.
No, I used to see him at the shows anyway, you know, but it was, I like to think I was never unkind. I was just trying to be funny. You know?
Well, I did find it very funny, and it's interesting because, like, your influence of that style of humour with the puns and everything, it has to have had a huge impact on me, because I think I have tried to emulate that style of humour, which I think does go down well, certainly with the American, like, bodybuilding fans. I've always found that. So it's like, yeah, it's just, yeah, it was such a good newspaper. I think I bought every single copy, and then obviously it stopped because you got the call, didn't you?
Yeah, there was two things happened. At the May 91 Night of the Champions, it was Ben Weeder who approached me and said, would you like to come to California?
Yeah.
Obviously talked to Joe. I knew Ben much better at that time. I know Ben pretty well since '85. I've met Joe a couple of times, but 2 or 3 minutes, he wouldn't remember me, I'm sure, you know, based on those short interaction. Mm-hmm. But he'd spoken to Joe. At first I was hesitant, but then, to be completely open, myself and my now wife, Anne, were the only people working at the magazine. We did get help from my great niece, Hannah Dexter, who used to help us for a short time. But Anne had 2 miscarriages. We were working, you know, all into the morning and, yeah, I don't know, 20 hours a day. And I decided, you know, so there's an offer to go to California. It's going to be less stress on us and less on Anne. And I went to California eventually in '92 because it took some time to get the papers through. God knows how long it'd take now with Donald Trump. I probably wouldn't get in at all, you know, with the restrictions. We're not having white-haired people of Scottish and Irish heritage in our country, even though his mother's Scottish, you know. But anyway, so we got there in July 1992, and I thought, well, it'll be an experience, a couple of years, maybe go back. And of course, 26 years later, I'm still here.
Sorry, you broke up a bit.
But Joe made the fateful call after I agreed. And the call came through to the office. We had an office each, me and Anne. And she answered the phone. She said, Joe Peters on the line. Oh, yeah, of course he is, yeah. He came on and he said, do you want to come and work for me? I thought, fuck off, Joe. You know, who wants to? No, it was like a dream. You know, it's like you pinch yourself. Joe Weider's asking me to come and work for him, so that was the first contact, and then we moved across there, and I went just as a standard staff writer. There was no position of authority at that time.
Yeah, because it was Jim Reynolds or Bill Reynolds, wasn't it? The original. He was the original, and he died, didn't he? He died.
Sorry, Giles. What was that?
It was Bill Reynolds was the original editor, wasn't he? And then who came in afterwards, in between you and him?
Well, it was Bill Dobbins was the first editor in '83 for
Bill Dobbins. I didn't realise he was the editor.
Yeah, and then Rick Wayne took over from like '84 to '87. Then Bill Reynolds. He was still the editor when they were making, these decisions to come across. But by the time I came across, he died. He shortly after going on Classic, he passed away. I mean, Bill was he was a character.
There's many characters in the industry, isn't there?
Sorry? I
think there's many characters in the industry, certainly in the media and, back in those days. I think because you had to kind of be a bit crazy and a bit eccentric to kind of to want to be in the industry, surely.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't as developed as it is now, so everybody really knew everybody, and it was, you made contacts with people. You couldn't, there was no emails and internet and all that stuff. Yeah. So a lot of it was personal connecting with people in a face-to-face situation.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, that's it. I took my abacus with me, because I didn't have a calculator. And the first, because I'm old school, the first article I turned into them, that they rejected because I'd written it in Latin. I'd gone back to my original way of writing, but it never went down very well with the Latin. No. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously the timing of your career kind of taking that upward trajectory was kind of it synchronized nicely with Dorian Yates. Obviously, a British, a non-American bodybuilder making waves, short, in line to win the Olympia. Do you think, obviously, you two really helped each other, didn't you, get to where you both needed to be? And enabled Dorian to stay in the UK and still be the huge success that he was?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it many times, it's almost like he had his ladder, I had my ladder, and we went up basically at the same time. I mean, I said the story about Dorian Yates before the 1990 Night of the Champions, saying this guy's going to be tremendous, blah, blah, blah. Sent them photographs, Kevin Hart taking them, not the black and whites, that came much later.
Yeah, before, yeah.
They came back to the message from Bill Reynolds. I didn't talk to him. We don't want anything from England. And I thought, well, you don't know what's coming. But anyway, it was like, you're only pushing him because you're both English. And I went back, look, I've written on and off the Flex since '83, a couple of articles a year that they'd asked me for.
Yeah.
In that time, we've had 8 British champions. I've never come on and said, this guy. And then said, they turned it down. I sent it to Muscle Mag. Muscle Mag got the scoop. And then, of course, when Dorian came to the Night of the Champions and got second, they were falling all over him to get him out to California to do photo shoots. And the coincidence was that the next year, 91, when he won, that's the contest that Ben Weider first approached me to, work in California. And it was the day that they gave Dorian his first contract.
Yes.
So we both dovetailed. And as I'm not saying in my little humble way, I got to the top of my ladder and he got the top of a hell of a ladder.
Yeah.
It was the same time. I mean, his last Olympia was when I took over Flex, like a couple of months before that, so
the good thing about having you there in his corner and kind of knowing how good he was and having that established relationship, it was good that he had you, that he could stay in the UK and be able to be publicised and have someone he could speak to. Because, you know, Dorian was a very, very private person, and people were, like you said, falling over themselves to find out about this new guy. But luckily, Dorian had yourself and Kevin Horton and obviously Chris Lund to be able to be shown. Otherwise, you know, no one would have known anything about Dorian.
Well, in one of my early discussions over in Woodland Hills, where the magazine Flex was based, one of the writers said, but there's nothing to write about him. He's monosyllabic, he hides away. I said, that's the fucking story. That's why he's the Shadow. That's, you know, I gave him the name The Shadow in '86 because I saw him as a shadow looming over the British heavyweights. And also because of his sort of, you know, the low profile he took. He didn't turn up to local qualifiers to say, hey, I'm here. You didn't see him from contest to contest. He hid away like a monk, and that was the end of it. That was the Shadow. But of course, as you know, in private, he's got a really dry sense of humour. You know, he's very articulate and very well spoken, you know. And like I said to them, that's the story. You know, this. And it did have an effect on people. I remember Flex Wheeler telling me, you know, everybody, Dorian has admitted it, he says, the only one I ever really worried about was Flex, you know. Yeah. And when you talk to Flex, he'll tell you, he's told me, he says, just Dorian's sheer presence used to intimidate me. You know, I'd be standing next to him, I'm like, oh, Jesus. You know, you'd see this rock-hard granite look, and this doer, you know, relentless, not whooping it up, not screaming from the rooftops, that persona sort of seeped through to anybody, like he was Ivan Drago or whatever, you know.
Do you think that's why Flex Wheeler never really brought his A game to the Olympia? He always kind of looked amazing at the Arnold Classics, and then come the Olympia time, he'd be good, 90%, but he would never quite bring what he brought when he knew Dorian maybe wasn't going to be at the Arnold Classic. Do you think that was a factor?
It could have been. He's never said that, but it's absolutely true. 93 Ironman and Arnold was tremendous. Wasn't as good at the 93 Olympia and got second. Same again in 98. I actually think he was better in 98 at the Arnold. Because he was big, but he was just as sharp. But he didn't bring it in 98 when it was running. You know, the door was open for a new champion. Flexes. And Ronnie spoiled the party, obviously. You know. So it could have been something to do with it.
Okay, here's another question. Obviously, you've been to many, many different bodybuilding shows, Olympias. What for you was your favourite ever Mr. Olympia contest?
I would have to say, for a variety of reasons, the 1988 Mr. Olympia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was, remember in those days, Venice and Goals, and that was the central bodybuilding. And I went there 10 days before, and you'd walk into Goals, and there was Mike Christian, who didn't compete eventually, you know, Gary Strider, Mike Quinn, Lee Labrada came into town. You know, all the guys were there. Yeah. Lee Haney came in and tried it. Then you went to Worlds. Bob Price was always in Worlds. Tom Platz, who wasn't working out at that time, but well, not competing, but he was doing a documentary, was there. Ralph Muller was there. So it was, you didn't have to make any calls. You just walked in and saw them all. And there was this tremendous atmosphere, you know, and it was held at the Universal Amphitheatre, you know, which is probably one of the biggest, plushest arenas the Olympia's ever been in.
Oh, really?
And everybody was in shape. What I do remember specifically was, if you get the video, the posing routines, everybody posed great. I can't think of anybody that Mike Quinn did a fantastic routine. Yeah. Labrada, Gaspari, Haney, even Strider, you know, he's never been renowned for his posing. It just all came together like a perfect storm. I know people might be surprised, say, well, you know, you're British, so why isn't it one of Dorian's? But for the collective buzz that I got from that, it was there. And like I say, everybody was there, and Gold's Gym in those days was like the holy grail of bodybuilding. Everybody. I saw some great amateurs in there. You know, saw Aaron Baker for the first time. Wow. Saw Chris Cormier, a couple of names that you took notes on. Thought, my God, this guy's not even a pro yet. Look at him.
Yeah. What was who do you think was the most underrated pro ever that you personally saw on stage?
That's a question from out of the blue, but my gut tells me, and I say my gut points to my head, which shows you how much I know about anatomy. I would have to say Thierry Pascal.
Oh, really? Thierry? I thought you were going to say Aaron Baker.
He would be up there, but I just thought everything about Thierry was, everything floats. It had all the body parts, big arms, but he was like, let's get, modern day parlance to say a classic physique. But he was like, Aaron was a bit more brutal and freaky. This was like maybe bodybuilding as it's supposed to be. And his posing, even the transitions of his mandatories were a work of art. He didn't just turn around and do something. There was a move to get there. And, what didn't hurt as well is he was a tremendous on the European tour. Everybody's walking around in the clown outfits, the Mark Christian crazy were. And there's Thierry, in a three-piece pinstripe suit with a white shirt and a dark tie, travelling, around.
Do you think Serge Nubret was influenced him in all ways with the dress, the dressing, the way he posed, his physique? Because he was one of his protégés, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, they both came from Guadeloupe originally to France. Thierry was younger, but yeah, he was completely, his mentor was Serge. Even the way they trained, they used to do ridiculous amounts of sets, like 30 or 40 sets for a pod, or even more than that, and train for hours at a time. So he was like the latter-day Nubret. He wasn't as big as Nubret, and of course Nubret had those shoulders and that wasp waist and everything. But yeah, I'm sure that, I've not thought of it before, but yeah, Nubret never turned up anywhere looking like a dog's dinner, He was always smart and everything,
So obviously with you alluded there to like Thierry Pascal and bodybuilding, you must be kind of happy that the classic class has come along and taken off. What's your feelings on that?
To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed.
Really?
Because I still think from certain ones I've seen, it's still the most ripped guy wins. And I'm not saying a classic physique guy can't be ripped. I just think that it's supposed to be about shape and balance and the flow and the tie-in of the physique, the body parts.
Yeah.
I thought that Chris Bumstead should have won the last classic Olympic based on that, the shape of the guy, the conditioning he had. But, the other guy was maybe a bit more conditioned, and I've seen that before. It's very difficult for the judges, I think, to have, the judging open bodybuilding, where obviously condition is a real main criteria, and then to sort of step that way and say, well, it shouldn't be such a fact. It's part of the package, but it's not the big It'll find its own level, and more guys are getting into it. So we're going to get some guy. We're going to get, I think, another Lee Haney will come through there. Some guy who wants to compete but doesn't want to be 280 pounds.
See, it is a new class, and I think I've explained that there was a bodybuilder called Wesley Vissers, and he won Chicago a couple of months ago. And I had him winning it, and a lot of people didn't have him win that. I said, look, there is a difference between, I see a difference between how they judge classic bodybuilding and how they judge a bodybuilding class. Same with like women's physique or women's bodybuilding. They are judged with a different criteria. So it isn't necessarily the biggest, thickest, leanest, most shredded guy, I do see there's a clear difference between the way it should be judged. So I do see your point that Chris Bumstead is really more of a classic style physique, So, yeah. But yeah. So, okay. So who in your mind was the best bodybuilder to never ever turn pro?
You should have asked me. I'm going to reel some names off and get to the point. Edgar Fletcher, you know, Matt Mendenhall, maybe Matt Mendenhall, because he had everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the cars and everything, he had that thick skin that, you know, he could get sliced and diced, but he's the shape of him was spectacular. He had every body part, and it was pretty free. But he just lost that. You know,
sorry.
You know, in those days, you see, he wouldn't be a pro today. Everybody can be a pro today. I can be a pro today. If they brought out a class for over 65s with white hair and who can do an impersonation of Joe Weider, I'd be there straight away. You know, but in those days, you remember, I mean,
it was hard.
in Matt's early days, he had to win the world championship. He had to win the American NPC. You didn't get a pro card. Lee Henry didn't get a pro card by winning the overall at the NPC. He had to go and win the world championships. It was much more difficult. So Edgar and him would have probably been in, you know, under the present, you know, system.
Same with Ronnie Coleman. I mean, he got fourth at the Nationals, didn't he, the one year, and then he had to go and win the World Amateur Championships to get his pro card. I mean, so there's a guy that could have took another year or two to get his pro card if he hadn't have gone that route. You know, he would have maybe turned pro a lot quicker if it was nowadays.
Well, it was the 91 Nationals. He was fourth.
Yeah.
It wasn't drug tested, so the top three said, you know, they were offered to go to Poland to represent, and they said no. You know, basically the drug test would have been a problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't a problem for Ronnie, and that's the first time I met him. And if somebody had told me he was going to be an 8-time Mr. Olympia, I would have said, yeah, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be the governor of California one day. You know, it was that ridiculous a notion, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first time I ever met you, it was the day after, in Nottingham at the hotel, it was the day after the 1994 British Grand Prix. I was 18 years old, and I was sat with Kevin Navrone and Charles Blake, the designer of the Olympia stage.
Okay.
So that was the first time I ever met you. I was 18. I remember, I think I was in my baggies and a padded shirt, I think, trying to make myself look bigger. But,
yeah, I don't remember. It was in the bar area, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it would be in the bar area with you, yeah. And wasn't Kevin Lavroni there?
Yes. Yeah, I was with Kevin. I sat with him doing his head in, driving him crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first time Kevin came to England was 92, the day after the Olympia where Dorian won for the first time and he got second, and he was saying, so is Nottingham in London? Is London in England? You know, it's like a geography lesson. But with Kevin, you never know whether he's just pulling your leg. Yeah. I mean, some of the conversations I'm sure you've had with him, you go into another world. It's like... Kevin used to call me up and say, guess what I'm doing now? And I said, I don't know. I'm forming a rock band. Oh, all right. So in the end, he called me up one day and he said, guess where I am now? I said, Kevin, if you told me you were on the moon, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put anything past you, you know. But he was, that was, you know, back in those days, it's like we talked about Dorian building his persona as the Shadow, you know, building Flex Wheeler as the, you know, maybe the best bodybuilder of all time, the king in waiting. Levroni as this wild card that could go anywhere. You know, NASA as this committed man who's going to win the Olympia. You know, it was. I'm not saying you control the personalities, but you build on it. Yeah. Now with social media, you could do a great story on some guy, painting him as the second coming of St. Francis of Assisi, and then he's on social media effing and blinding at somebody, so you can't control it.
See, what guys like yourself were before social media, you were like a marketing filter for them. You would filter out all the... I remember when, I think it was, like, what was it? Well, something that Victor Richard said to you, and you went, well, probably not going to put that in the magazine. Do you remember you told me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, probably not going to put that in the magazine. Do you remember?
Yeah, that would have maybe kiboshed his career, but
yeah,
maybe one day I'll go public. But in deference to him, it's maybe not fair. He wasn't anything criminal. I mean,
yeah, no. But
it was just somebody who admired, which would have raised a few eyebrows.
Yes, slightly, yes. So what were they like on those Grand Prix tours? What were they like? Traveling with all the pros and all the dealing with all the personalities and all the kind of adventures and all the shows in so many days, and like having bodybuilding shows in abattoirs, isn't it, in Russia, and in a big tent, and all the gypsies stealing the carpet and all sorts. There
was two aspects to it. I mean, I used to do the gossip column, Hard Times, for Flex. So, most of the guys were under leader contracts, so I had access to them. And you became friendly. And that friendship was bonded even further on the tour because you were together for 2 or 3 weeks. The travel was like, to get the cheapest flights, it was like, if you wanted to go from Madrid to London, they said, well, first you have to go to Milan, then you have to go to Frankfurt. So there was these long plane journeys that shouldn't have been. Getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to arriving at a venue, an airport, an hour before the show was to begin and going straight to the venue. And we were all like, it wasn't like there was the bodybuilders and then there was these, it was like we were all together as a group. We ate together and we talked together on the plane, hanging around in locker rooms and everything. So it really bonded. And those friendships, I would say, they've been sustained. I mean, when I say some of the old guys, I'm the really old guy. Maybe it doesn't happen today to the same extent. When I used to do the gossip column, the guys would get into trouble and I'd do a deal and I'd say, look, I'm not going to write about this until somebody else lets the cat out of the bag.
Right.
But when they do, you have to talk about it and we'll put the best shine on it. And they started to respect that. I mean, I did help a lot of people out, personal things would happen. Chris Cormier was going through in his own little world. I remember once he called me and I said, where are you? He says, I don't know. I'm in a hotel room. I says, look on the phone. He says, oh, I'm in Arizona, Phoenix or something. I said, how did you get there? He says, I don't know. How are you going to get back? He says, I don't know. I haven't got any luggage. I haven't got my money with. I'm just here on my own. So woke up in this hotel room. So I arranged how to get him back and everything. And there were other things, marital splits and things that were going on. My mother always wanted me to be a priest, and that's when I became the father confessor, and I had the white hair and everything and the Irish look about me. So I should put a dog collar on and be done with it.
Do you know what bodybuilders should do? They should employ you to manage their social media.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not been done professionally, has it? I mean, you build up. You don't make something up about a guy, but you figure out what his main traits are. Like Sean Ray, outspoken, well, let him speak,
Yeah.
There's a couple of times I'd say to him, you sure you want to put that in? And I was the gossip monger, I wanted outrageous stuff, but I always said that, well, maybe this is a bit too far, Sean. I think a couple of times he agreed with me. The other times, no, put it in, to hell with it. He realised what he was doing. I mean, there's the guy still making a living today, one of the few bodybuilders that stayed in the industry without opening a supplement company, but is still very visible and very revered.
You said to me that when all the different bodybuilders would write columns and send in articles, Sean Ray was the one that would always write his own, word for word, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I always did this joke, okay, this is the way you interview Sean Ray. You phone him up, John, give me your first question, put the phone down, you go for a haircut, you have an affair with the barmaid, have a few drinks. You come back and he's still going.
Yeah.
He didn't need much prompting.
Brilliant.
And it was
brilliant.
It wasn't, some guys like that, you have to sort it out because you just contradicted yourself all over. He wasn't. He was focused on what he was saying all the time. And the other great thing about him,
oh, Peter, you got your hand over the microphone.
Sorry.
That's it. Sorry. See that again? You might have said something really juicy then.
Yeah. I would say one other thing about Sean, and the same would be true of Dennis James and Bob Ciccarello, and I'm trying to think of anybody else. Once a guy gets a contract, they'll beg you for a contract. I'll do anything. Once they get a contract, after a few months, it's they don't want to do the photo shoots. They can't be bothered. They're late. This, that, and the other. Sean was always punctual.
Yeah.
And if something dropped out, I mean, he used to live near where Chris Lund used to shoot down in Costa Mesa. Chris knew he could call him and he'd come in and do a photo shoot because he realised the more photos, the more publicity. Dennis James was like that. Ciccarello was like that, whereas others, it was like, they would do it as a favour by, doing the photo shoot in the first place. But Sean was totally professional like that. Well, my time at Flex, Sean got more covers than anybody else. It wasn't because he was a favourite of mine. It was because there were more great shots of him than anybody else. He had more photo shoots, so there was more options and there's more chance of, we've got gold here, or as Chris Lund used to, bloody magic, man.
It's like, I remember you said once about you never managed to shoot Flex Wheeler after the Arnold Classics when he looked his best because he'd always go home the next day. And that's why you never did many front covers of Flex Wheeler, because he was so difficult to get a hold of, and then he'd be eating, and then a week later he'd be out of shape. So, whereas someone like Sean Ray, he's always available, he was always in shape, he was tanned. See, Flex Lewis was very much like that. When he first started, he would always be, within a phone. Somebody didn't turn up for a photo shoot, Flex Lewis would make sure he'd be there, shaved, tanned. Yeah. And it's and you create more opportunity for yourself that way, and it opens doors by being that professional.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, do you ever see yourself moving back to the UK?
To be honest, if I wasn't dealing with this health issue, we'd be back in England now. We still have a house in England. Mm-hmm. But the medical assistance I'm getting here locally, Fort Myers, Florida, in 5 years, I've built up a relationship with my doctor and the nurses and the clinic, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere else to receive treatment for cancer.
Yeah.
So, but my heart is back in the UK. The longer you're away from your own country, the more patriotic you become. All our family are there.
Yeah.
But there's just something about your roots and being back where you belong, where you're all on the same radar. And I mean, we're not unhappy here. Don't get me wrong, but it would just be nice to go back and be on our own home back in the UK.
You go back about once a year, don't you? Maybe about once a year.
Well, we used to, but when I got ill 5 years ago, I've only been back once. That was 2016, late 2016. I went back last year, but things were horrendous health-wise. I ended up in a wheelchair, and back end of last year, I had this massive hemorrhage that they couldn't stop, and it looked like I was on the way out. But luckily it fixed itself. What was the question? There's nothing for me.
You're talking about it now. How is your health now? Because I came out to you, we and Rosie came out to you last year, just after Tampa, and you were doing okay. I mean, you're still here, still alive and kicking. So how's it been the last few years for you then? Where are you at now?
Well, I was diagnosed 5 years ago this month. Had this massive operation later, and then chemo on it. And for the first few months of chemo, it wasn't too bad, but eventually, there was so many side effects. I had a real bad year last year. I got pneumonia. Then they thought I had a stroke. They never found out what that was. I had this internal. And earlier this year, my oncologist said, they'd had to reduce the chemo because I was reacting to it in a bad way. Sending it into shock. When you've had it for such a long time, and he said, look, you know, the chemo's doing you more harm than good. He put me in this new procedure where they send radioactive particles that attack the blood vessels that feed tumours. I've got 3 tumours that have been the same size now for over 2.5 years. They haven't gone up, haven't gone down. Had this procedure in April, and like 90% of one of them has gone, and the others as major inroads into reducing them. But I'm free of all the side effects of chemo. I eat normally. I walk maybe 50 minutes a day. I couldn't walk before. I'm back in the gym doing a little bit. So Phil, he doesn't have to worry just yet. Maybe next year I should start to worry. It wasn't that funny. So this is the best 3 months I've had in 5 years.
Oh, brilliant.
And I will be going to the Olympia. You know, I made my mind up. I'm going. I'm going on my own dime. That sounds cheap. I need to go. You know, who knows what the future holds. I want to see everybody that I've known, you know, the competitors and officials, and whatever. So I'm really looking forward to being there.
Well, me and Ron...
And for once, sort of get around working, I'll be there to enjoy and you know, see the whole thing.
You can watch me and Ron running around like headless chickens, trying to grab all the content for Steve and everything. But yeah, because me and Ron, they booked my flights because me and Ron will be covering the Olympia again this year. We'll have press passes this year as well. We'll be so we'll be covering the. So like I said, Ron was really happy, and myself, to hear that you're going to be at the Olympia this year. And would you come in on the wrap up with us, or do you not fancy it?
I think you guys do a great wrap up. You know, Ron and Mike got a great job. If you want it, but I don't know what I'd add to it. You know, let's. Yeah, I'm not against it, but I'm saying it. I won't be talking now. You need to talk to me, Charles. You need to talk to me.
let's do something though. Because I'm going to bring on my own video equipment over as well because I want to do some extra stuff. But let's definitely do something, even if it's like a day after or something outside with the microphones, and it'd be good. So I'd like to see, even not just hear about the show, but your experience being back at the Olympia, seeing everyone, and because you know it's funny, like when I was at Tampa last year, it was Dan Solomon and Tim Gardner both said that you were missed. You were missed at that show because me and Rosie came to see you and Anne, but we really wanted to see you at the Tampa show, and it's it was nice. It was just, you know, Tim and Dan said, you know, he says, yeah, we really wished, you know, because you live down the road, don't you? You know, so
yes, 2.5 hours. That's how. You know, when you came, I had to lift myself up. I was a lot worse than you would have known, you know, but it was like, and Ian Harrison came as well, so it was like, okay, showtime.
Yeah, it's funny because
I didn't eat much. I can't remember I was eating.
Well, you had a couple of slices of pizza.
Oh yeah, we had pizza.
Pizza and wine at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was drinking red wine outside at the back.
But touching on, say, that Dan Solomon from Gardeners, one of the things that I've always cherished during this period is the support I've had from the bodybuilding community, from bodybuilders, fans I've known, people on the MD boards. I get private messages from them, how you doing, all the best. It makes a difference, and I, you know, I sort of, in a way, want to spread the story of how well I feel today. I mean, I'm not out of the woods by a long way, but you've got to hang in there. You've got to fight. You know, never throw the towel in. I treat cancer as I'm in a boxing ring with somebody, and I have to keep them at bay, and I can never let them come halfway across the ring. I'm nuts as well, by the way, but you know, you've got to have something to fight for. Yeah. And I always had this thing. Last another year, something new will come through. And it has come through, you know, and hopefully that trend will continue. So to anybody who's got cancer and the families, because it's as hard on the families as it is on the individual, really, never give up hope. I know it's difficult when things are bad and you're in pain and things are happening that you wish were happening, but you have to stick in there. as that great Englishman, friend of ours, Winston Churchill, used to say. What did he say?
What did he say?
If you're going through hell, keep going.
Keep going, yeah, keep going.
That's the answer.
Yeah. I mean,
also.
So I mean, we spoke quite. I remember when I think Rosie and Anne went inside, and we spoke quite, openly and sort of privately about your situation, and you were just it was it's good to see that like a year later now, and you're feeling better, and it's really good to see, Peter. It's really good to see. It's just, you are. Thing is, it's nice. There seems to be. I try to steer away from any sort of negativity in the sport and towards certain individuals, but there's always seems to be so much positivity, and I love to see someone like yourself that was such, given so many valuable contributions to the sport, and even like the younger fans know who you are that maybe wouldn't have been around or old enough to buy Flex years ago, and MD and stuff, and it's like they were, but there seems to be that universal appreciation for someone like yourself of not just your work, but who you are and what you kind of bring, the Britishness.
From Oklahoma, this is all let me tell you something about this accent. When I first went to Flex, they were doing a story on Arnold Schwarzenegger, the film that was Last Action Hero. Do you remember all the hype about that film? And they wanted to get the views of the film critic of the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Boston Herald, and they weren't getting any calls answered. And Jerry Candela said to me, "You call." I said, what difference I make? He says, "You have a British accent." They all called back and gave me the views, and that's happened. I've been in big meetings, and you start to. It was a British guy. One of the guys said to me once, actually, I don't know whether it's true or not, he's probably having me on. When you speak in a British accent and have to explain something that isn't very pleasant, like a circulation number or something, he says it always sounds better in a British voice than an American voice. Like, I don't know, it's accents. I've never lost my accent. Yeah. I mean, people say, I thought, for the first 44 years of my life, I lived in England. Why would I suddenly
Well, it's like Flex Lewis. Flex Lewis, apart from when he says "bro," he sounds exactly like he did in 2003 when he was still living in that little village in Wales. He's never lost that he's never lost that thick Welsh accent. There's not even a twang really. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and do you know what? One thing you and me share. You and me are pretty insightful, and we know our stuff to a degree. You and me both missed the Flex Lewis thing. You and I both thought he didn't have that, you saw Dorian in '86 and you were like, that guy is going to be something special, and people are going, yeah. And it was like when you said to Flex Lewis, you said, mate, just go back to Wales. Don't waste your money coming over to here. And I was the same. I was pretty much, I didn't see what he could become, and both of us are normally probably quite good at that. We have experience, Well,
it was Jeff Collins, a photographer. You know Jeff Collins?
I know Jeff.
Photographer. He brought Flex across, probably 2002, and we walked up Venice Beach on the boardwalk, just me and Flex. A lovely fellow from the get-go, And
from the ghetto?
From the get-go.
Hey, Wales isn't that bad. Wales isn't that bad.
Choose whatever version and, start the lawsuit tomorrow. So, obviously seen the pictures and everything. Fantastic legs, but he's never going to get that open body. But the main thing was he wanted to come across then. And Venice in them days was a hotbed of all sorts of things going on. I didn't want this young man... The story's been a bit painted. I said, "You're never going to be any good. Go back to Wales." I said, "Go back to Wales and build your physique, and then come out here when because I didn't want a 20-year-old or whatever it was living out there in Venice. Eventually, he did come across very soon, but he didn't get involved in any of the other stuff that was going on, and it all worked out for him. And he's still the same guy. I saw him last week in Tampa. He's he's not changed at all, despite all the success. You know?
Yeah, he's just that's what I love about him. He's still very, even as a competitor, he's still competing. He's still very supportive of his fellow athletes. Like say Jay Cutler was to Phil Heath when Phil was coming up. Jay was helping Phil, and that's what Flex does to the other athletes. He really reaches out to them. He really tries to help them, and you think, well, why is he helping them? That's his competition, you know. And I love that about him.
Yeah, I mean, I went to his wedding 2 years ago, and Jose Roman was there, Guy Cisterino,
yeah.
There was a couple of other 2-1-2, and I was talking to them, and they know. They say we actually are friends. We're a bit different from the open guys. You know, we support each other, and we all want to do things. And I was talking to Jose at one point, and he says, "Yeah, I want to win the 2-1-2. I want to win the 2-1-2, but I don't want to disappoint Flex." I'm not saying he didn't win it but he still had that. Oh, you know, it was a spoiled Flex's party. Yeah. Nobody else is thinking like that. You know, I mean, Jose is one of the best guys. Yeah. Him and Flex are like brothers from another continent. You know,
I remember once I was at the Arnold Classic after party, and Jose was doing an impression of Flex, and he says, "Don't you think Flex Lewis sounds like a pirate?"
Yeah.
So we started doing an impression of Flex, and we're in this dark sort of room at the bar and stuff, and all of a sudden, Jose gets a tap on the shoulder, and he turns around, and it's Flex, and Flex was stood there all along listening. And he's like, "Oh, I sound like a pirate, do I?" Oh, it's brilliant.
I saw this happen. Dexter Jackson doing an imitation of Phil Heath's pose. Spot on.
Oh, really?
And then Phil on a Dexter, and it was spot on. I said, you two should go on the road. Maybe we'll try and get them to do that at the Olympia. You know, every affectation each of them had, the other one picked up on and could do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So Rosie wants to ask a question. She's asked me. She said, if you hadn't gone into the bodybuilding media, because this is a question I sometimes ask myself, if I hadn't got into, where would I have ended up? So where do you think you'd have ended up if you hadn't?
Before that, my career was in business in terms of I used to manage a paint and wallpaper distribution depot with about 40 people. I actually got the job when I was 20. And looking back, I went, wow, I've always been very organised. So it would have been something like that. But in a way, something inside me always told me I would end up in journalism. It's always what I wanted to do. And in 1979, my first marriage, we had a son who passed away. And that woke me up. That was like, life is for grabbing, not for waiting. And I started to write for a local paper, did a few things. And it took me a couple of years. I don't know, to this day, I don't know why I didn't get onto the bodybuilding magazine straight away. Because I knew, write about what you know. And then, I've not really answered your question. Where would I have ended up? I think somehow it was meant to be. Sorry, folks. Apologies to everybody for having been around for so long and writing all this rubbish. But it was meant to be. It was destiny.
Thing is, though, it's like myself. There's many times when I was working my way up the ladder, I had a couple of like knockbacks, to go. It made me think maybe I should have thought this isn't for me. I need to do something a bit more sensible here. But it's like there's that something, that love, that passion that just keeps you driving forward. It keeps bringing you. It keeps pulling me back in. And I'm sure you're the same. You just didn't. It's like I think we can relate to each other in a lot of ways, because you're like you just went right to the top, and it's like you're driven by your passions,
Actually, it never made much sense financially what I was doing until I went to California as a writer. Even with Pumpkin Press, Anne used to pay me £40 a week, right? This is what used to happen. She'd give me £40 on a Friday afternoon, 4 £10 notes. And then she'd say, I've got to go to Sainsbury's, I need money for shopping. How much do you need? I need £40. So, she would get it back. And I've had some bad dealings with publishers. Not Alex McKenna, he's one glowing exception,
Yeah.
He was always a gentleman. But I always used to say, because Anne became the publisher of Pumping Press, and I was editor-in-chief or whatever, I said, in all the other magazines, the publishers used to screw me. Now I can do the reverse. Anne's not here at the moment, otherwise that would be.
Oh, that is.
But
yeah.
It is. It never made financial sense, is what I'm saying. So there was a passion to do it. You know, travelling to places, going to the Night of the Champions, not staying in the host hotel, couldn't afford it, finding some, you know, dump. Eating at McDonald's because it couldn't afford, and then swanning in as if we just come from the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah.
You know, it was all front. You know.
Yeah. So, is another question? What do you see as your biggest overall achievement in all your years in the industry?
In the industry, becoming editor-in-chief of Flex. That was my. I never thought it was going to happen. I didn't set out with that ambition. It happened when Jerry Candela left and wanted a new editor. And that was when I was happiest, to be honest. I took over Muslim Fitness as well, but there was reasons that I had to take it. But I was always happier with Flex. I always treated Flex as my baby. You know, it was something that I worked long and hard on. You know, was always in the office at the weekend, immensely proud of holding the magazine up and say, that's it, good, bad or indifferent. That's the great thing about the magazine business. You know exactly what you've done, you know, not to decry other professions, but if you're in an office, how do you quantify in that way? There it is.
I mean, I don't know you can see around my house, I've got all sort of framed... I mean, I've got, well, this is mostly comic art in here, but I've got like framed magazines from where I've photographed front covers and, you know, and at the window.
I've got, did I show you the storeroom?
You did. I can see that behind you. Sorry?
Sorry?
Sorry, go on.
So, it's got all the magazines that I've worked on since I came here in 92. And then at home in the attic, I've got the previous 20 years since I got involved. And that's why I'm very proud of being in the magazine business. And I hate to see magazines thrown away. And of course, when Flex closed, it was, you know, I've been left nearly 10 years now, although I started to do articles for them again. Yeah. And it was very sad, especially, you know, Sean Perry died, the editor-in-chief died tragically young, and then Flex itself closed down. And it's the end of an era, you know, of a time when I think the late 90s, early 2000s, when everybody's reference point was the magazines. The internet wasn't as developed. So you want to know what's going on, you better get a magazine, you know, and we're in a different era now.
Yeah. Oh, Peter, I could talk all night, mate.
Yeah.
I could talk all night. Well, obviously, I can't wait to see you at the Olympia, mate. I really can't wait. Me and Ron are really excited about you coming, so we'll have to hang out. In fact, do you remember in Miami in 2012? And I think it really highlighted the difference between British humour and American humour. There was me, you, Steve Blettman, George Farrer, my friend Crystal, a few others, and I remember George told a joke, and everyone all the Americans were like literally falling over laughing, and you and me just looked at each other, and you just went. I was just like, yeah, it must be an American thing. So, I remember that.
One of the first things I learned coming over here, the difference in the humour or the delivery of humour, it happened with Ralph DeHaan, photographer. You know, this was very early on, and we bumped into each other. And then he says, so how's Dorian doing these days? And I said, he's doing fine. He's going through this phase of working with his clothes, you know. Hold on. It's a joke. I learned that you have to go. Now follows the punchline.
Yeah,
and you have to laugh. Otherwise, it was like, really? You know, you could say anything, and it was. we have this, you know, we don't crack a smile when we crack a joke. You know who was like that was Sean Perrine. He was the same.
Really, really.
I was talking to his sister and saying, you know, Sean, he would fool some people by just what he said because he wasn't. Oh, and another thing I've got to tell. You know, he was like, well, you know, and then they'd go, oh, it's a joke, it's a joke.
It's a joke. Yeah. I remember when I was doing a play-by-play once at the British Grand Prix, and a comment, it was because Eduardo Correa beat Jose Raymond, or either way, but vice versa, in the 212. And someone said, Giles, can you please explain to me where Jose beat Eduardo Correa? And I said, Manchester. And you said, you came under, and everyone else was like, what? No one else referred to it. And you went, Giles, that's the post of the year. And it was like, typical another Brit would notice that stupid humour. Yeah. They were trying to say which area. Where do you tell me where in his physique he bought? What areas of his physique do you do? And I went, well, I said you're asking me where he beat him, and I told you he beat him in Manchester.
It's like Ian Harrison. We were driving to a photo shoot. We probably told this story last year when you were here. It was after he won the British in 1989. He was 20 years old, and he was in Trent. Yeah. And we're driving to a photo shoot. And he says, one day, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia. And I says, Ian, I just hope they have Mr. Olympia contest on that day. You know? Whoever was driving nearly went off the road. You know, I think, yeah, we have a similar sense of humour, and we're probably the only people in the world that know what each other's talking about.
I think Rosie and Anne really kind of I could see the eye contact they were giving when you and me were telling our jokes, and they're kind of like they empathise with each other's pain, you know. So with the puns. Sorry. Japan at the moment. Sorry.
Japan, yeah. Has Rosie been to Japan yet?
Yeah, she's back. Yeah, she's just gone out to get me a Nando's. So yeah, we just recorded Muscle News Weekly before, and yeah, she was very. She's all excitable because she's been out there, you see, eating sushi and hanging out with all the Japanese fans and everything. So anyway, okay, Peter. Well, I think we better wrap it up, mate, because I need to get editing the show and put this in. And this is it's an absolute pleasure and a real honour to have you on, and I'm really pleased. I was really chuffed when you sent me the message back saying, yeah, I'd love to. So a big thank you to you, Peter, and just can't wait to see you at the Olympia, mate. So with Peter McGough, I'm Giles Thomas for, what's it called again? Tiger Talk. For Tiger Talk. So we'll see you next episode. Cheers.
For a session.
Okay.
How much is it?
Don't worry about it.
What's going on here? I'm not having this.
What's that? Amino Spark?
That's exactly what it is. Amino Spark.
Turn around and flex that back. We'll grow old, but we'll stay toned, and the gym will be there till the end. I'll never be pear-shaped. These rocks won't lose their